Here to talk about the payroll tax fight is Central Arkansas Congressman Tim Griffin. And as always, we want to thank you for being here, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Let's start off with the big question. Why did you and most of the other House Republicans pass on the Senate's bipartisan 2-month extension on the payroll tax cut? Why?
Well, we passed an extension for a full year, which equals about $1,000 per middle-class worker. And the Senate passed one for 2 months, which is about $166. And under our system, we often have disagreements between the House and the Senate, but we work them out in conference. So we have set up a conference, and I think more than anything, the Senate just wanted to get home, and I understand that. But we feel like, hey, we're happy to work together, work out our differences like we do on a lot of stuff. But we've got to follow the process for that. I just don't think tax policy should be decided on a 2-month basis. And I'm not the only one. I've heard from a lot of job creators. In fact, I just did a radio interview, and a job creator called in. He said, look, at least do quarters. The tax forms are for a quarter. At least do a quarter. But the president wants a year. He has asked for a year. We gave him a year. The Senate said, well, we'd like to have a year, but we don't want to stay around long enough to get it done now. We'll do it in a couple of months. And we just felt like, let's don't kick it down the road. Let's deal with it now. And so leadership is still in the House. The negotiators for the conference are at the House, and we're waiting to see what the Senate does. But I think ultimately that some sort of agreement.
And that's where I wanted to get to. What happens if we don't? Or do you think it will be likely that we will? You just said you think so. But what's going to happen in order to get there? Because it really doesn't seem like Democrats and Republicans agree on anything.
Sure. Well, I will just say this. There have been a number of issues where we have had wide disagreements this year. Debt, spending, budget, and each and every time, as painful as it has been at times, we've reached agreement. And they're not perfect.
Not on everything, though.
Well, to keep the government running, the defense bill we passed last week, the spending bill we passed last week, certainly not everything, but the necessary things that have to pass for government to function. And a lot of those bills have things in them I don't like. But we have an obligation to make things work at some point, and I have voted for every one of those. And I think that we will ultimately will get something done on this.
10 days remain until the tax cut expires. It took Congress 2 months of fighting to raise the debt ceiling this summer. It took weeks to pass another spending plan last month. What makes you think a deal can be reached in less than 10 days?
Because we're actually relatively close on this. I mean, negotiators have been working on this for some time. And I guess our position has been, yes, normally Congress goes and works back home in this time of year. But our position was, if they could have stayed another week, we could have gotten the whole year done. And look, as I said, there have been a number of agreements this year that were reached, and I recognize at the end of the day, even if they're not perfect, we've got to make government work. I have voted for every single one of those compromises.
Let me ask you a question from one of our... We actually asked our viewers to send us email questions. So Courtney Warwick, she brought up a point. She says this: when we had the debt ceiling debate, Republicans wouldn't pass it without a lot of spending cuts. With the payroll tax cut, there's this gas pipeline from Canada that's become a point of contention. These are bills that all sides say need to be passed. So why attach controversial items to them? Isn't that just playing politics and not looking out for the country's best interest?
Well, I would say it is looking out for the country's best interest. In fact, the Keystone Pipeline, in my opinion, and a lot of Democrats' opinions, is important not only for our energy but for our national security. And in fact, Wellspun, an employer here in this district, had to lay off workers 2 weeks ago because of the delay in the Keystone Pipeline. The reason you put things in there like that is because we think they're important, and you negotiate to get what you want. That's the legislative process. I will fight and fight and fight for Keystone Pipeline to continue. You want shovel-ready jobs? Keystone Pipeline shovel-ready jobs.
All right. Congressman Tim Griffin, as always, thank you for being here.
Merry Christmas.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say I wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas.
I am looking forward to getting to see my family.
I can understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to our Fox 16 web poll question. Do you think Congress will be able to extend the payroll tax cut before the year ends? Go to fox16.com to vote, or you can text us Fox 16 yes or Fox 16 no to 45548. Your answers in our 5:30 newscast. Well, some new rules for commercial airline pilots.